This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. and Ms. Westchester and the world. John Bailey, the Citizen Net reporter with you. Welcome back, Jim Benerofe, the Dean of Journalists in White Plains, New York, USA. Great to have you back with us, Jim. And the anchor for all seasons, Peter Katz. And we are in the 16th year of White Plains Week, the City News Roundup show. Jim, welcome back. I could not do the headlines without you while you were on assignment. You can watch the tapes and it proves it. And now, let her rip.
Okay, here are the headlines for the week of January 27th, 2017. The Westchester County Gun and Knife Show was held last weekend to record crowds both days. Up to 8,000 attended at the county center. Politicians shocked that Nazi and anti-Semitic books were displayed and want a law banning them in the future shows. Marcus Austin, star basketball player for White Plains High School, who was on the White Plains team which won the 1999 state championship, was a basketball player in the ABA and a professional in psychiatric care in Montpelier, Vermont, is shot and killed. A suspect, Javion Caballero, is sought by police and believed to be in the New York area. Caballero was identified by the man who drove him to where Marcus Austin was shot. Councilwoman Milagros Lacuna to announce Sunday she will run a primary against Mayor Tom Roach to run for mayor. The Civil Service Employees Association votes to approve 3-year retroactive contract with the city. It expires in 2018. School district holds budget forum for suggestions from citizens, a preliminary 2017-2018 budget to be presented in February. Church Street School will begin dual language kindergarten in fall to comply with state requirement to provide instruction in native languages. Security audit will be made in all White Plains school facilities. Local citizens participate in the Women's March on Washington and protest President Trump's ban on funding for abortion and aid to foreign nations. I was in Washington over Inauguration Weekend, and I'll tell you about what I saw. And Peter Katz will begin a new feature, Trump the President, wrapping up Mr. Trump's first 6 days. Mary Tyler Moore, whose shows established new trends in television, dies at 80.
Thank you, Jim. And now we'll go to the Rolo Newsreel, March of Time, January 27th, 2017. And it began with a foggy weekend. And I'm telling you, folks, it just got foggier and foggier as the week went on. And
the fog will now continue. Actually,
that's right. Wait.
The fog lift.
Wait. Have a picture of the event that we attended on Saturday, and that was the gun show in White Plains. 8,000 people attended. Peter, what were your impressions?
Well, actually, my impressions were that this was quite a story going on, because even though the gun show at the county center did take place this past Saturday and Sunday, January 21st and 22nd, the controversy still lingers on. In addition, there were complaints just recently that Nazi books and memorabilia were being sold at the show. Now, the people selling the items said they were just historic items, but critics said they were new printings of the Nazi books and new Nazi merchandise. Astorino defended the sales, saying that it protected free speech.
At times, there was an hour wait to get into the gun and knife show at the Westchester County Center in White Plains. County Executive Rob Astorino had vetoed legislation banning gun shows on county property, which had been passed by the Board of Legislators. The legislature would not have had enough votes to override his veto.
There was no justification to ban a gun show based on the facts and based on the law. And I know some people were emotional, both sides. But when you look at this, we have already, in just the first day, basically smashed a record of attendance for what we expected for 2 days. And so the people in Westchester who wanted to exercise their right and come here and peruse, they're doing that. And so I think what's getting lost in this debate is how diverse this county really is. And you're seeing that diversity, by the way, on this line. No matter where people stand on the ideological spectrum or political, or racial or religious, you know, everyone has an opportunity in this county to exercise their rights. And I know some people wanted me to not veto it and let the complete ban take effect. Well, that would have done the opposite of what they wanted. This is a government building that is highly regulated. We have a police presence here of both uniform and undercover. The law will be followed to the letter of the law. And everyone that comes in here, if they're purchasing a gun, will have to go through a background check and can't leave with that weapon unless they have a background check and a permit. So it is not the OK corral as some people tried to make it out to be. Everything is strictly followed by the letter of the law. And it's ironic because in Albany, right now, this weekend, is a gun show that is on state property, permitted by the governor and the attorney general and others. And so they understand as well that you cannot ban it, and neither did we. So, you know, for those who are disappointed, I understand that and I respect that. But for many people who wanted to come here, they had the right to do that as well.
Some say you're doing this just to try to curry favor with gun enthusiasts upstate with a view toward a run for governor.
Well, no, because I'm running for county executive in Westchester County. And so this has nothing to do with politics. This has everything to do with the rights of people, First Amendment and Second Amendment rights, and has the rights of people to come here and show their support or to come and purchase.
These shows have been taking place here for decades. This particular promoter has been here since 1984. There's never been an incident. It's a family event. I've been going to them since I was a teenager throughout the state. We know how they are, and we know it's a very popular event to have, and we wanted to make sure that the people of Westchester who pay their taxes in Westchester and who live here have the opportunity, just like everybody else, to afford themselves of their constitutional right to come to a show and enjoy what they like to do in their spare time.
We all sympathize with anyone who has been a victim of gun violence. That's not what this is about, though, today. Those are people who don't respect the law, who take an illegal gun and commit a crime. Those who are drug-infested or gang-infested. We all want those people off the street and in jail. This is about something very, very different. This is about law-abiding citizens who absolutely respect the law and have an appreciation for the Second Amendment and the First Amendment, and that's why they're here.
Now, as of our recording of this program, the Board of Legislators has not overridden the county executive's veto of the legislation that they, the legislators, had passed banning gun shows, nor have they passed compromise legislation designed to make county law out of what's now accepted as good procedures to follow while running a gun show. John?
Yeah. Now, I interviewed Newman Chittenden, who runs the gun show for Westchester Collections, and he informed me that every handgun brought into that show for sale is tagged and has attachments to the barrel and the trigger to prevent it from being fired, and they are kept under lock and key. And if you purchase a handgun, you have got to have a pistol permit to even handle it. if you want to purchase a handgun. And it may take, according to John Testa, at least 5 weeks to get a gun permit, and sometimes it can take as much as half a year.
Well, nonetheless, the gun show controversy is not going to go away anytime soon, I believe.
No. Jim, any comments on the gun show deal?
Well, I would not ban the gun show. I was basically in agreement with much of what Astorino said. I think you have to allow it. And even though I don't like the Nazi and anti-Semitic books, I don't think you can ban them. I think that would be a direct violation of free speech, and you don't want to do that. And certainly not a media person wouldn't want to advocate that.
Well, you know, we're about to see an example of free speech and democracy at work right here in White Plains. It's supposed to happen on Sunday, right, John?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Milagros Lacuna, the councilwoman, is going to announce that she is going to run for mayor. She's going to try and primary Tom Roach in the fall, and she also will be holding an announcement at 170 East Post Road, and a reception afterwards to take questions from the media.
And so this is scheduled to happen this coming Sunday. We're recording this program on a Friday, so in 2 days from now, things will get fairly interesting in White Plains in the Democratic political scene.
Just taking another boring election year and livening it up. Right.
Yeah, and actually things calmed down a little bit on the labor front here in White Plains.
Yes, the Civil Service Employees Association has settled with the city, and they're very happy with the deal. 75% of their membership of, let's say, I think about 389 voted. And
in favor, voted to ratify the contract. Now, this contract, it's a retroactive contract, which I mean, they've been working without a contract for about 2 years now. So this goes back, and it covers the period where they had worked without a contract, and it also goes forward into 2018. And it really brings a bit of labor peace.
Right. They also have closure on the retirement restrictions.
Right. The city required that retirees pay a portion of the premium for medical benefits that they receive. It's one of the benefits of being a government employee. When you retire, you get medical care. But the city required that the police, among others, kick in a piece of this, and also that the civil service union members kick in a piece of it. This was challenged in court. The city's position was not upheld by the court, and so if you were an employee before 1995 and you're now a retiree, you will no longer have to pay a portion of the medical insurance benefit that you were promised. You wouldn't have to pay the premium.
It remains to be clear whether they will get back what they've already paid.
Whether that there will be a refund for what the retirees have already paid in.
We asked the mayor's office for comment on the deal, but they haven't gotten back to us yet, and our lines are open.
Right, the school budget is coming up again.
Right, and they started things off with getting I'm tongue-tied, ladies and gentlemen, because it has been a tough week for news. And so at any rate, there is a new interim superintendent, Dr. Lawrence Smith, and he is showing up some of the ideas that parents had. There was only about 20 parents there, it was shown in the lower right.
On the inaugural view of the budget.
That's right. And the budget was not really presented at Ann Vaccaro Tech. The new assistant superintendent for business said it will be out in February, and she expects to be pressured. There's going to be higher health costs, and there's no new school aid, they're told, this year. There's not going to be another $2 million.
The big thing that the school system needs to start worrying about is what's going to happen if Betsy DeVos is confirmed as the Secretary of Education for the federal government and actually follows through on her plans to her desires to defund public education. If
That's going to be,
If
it's
the-
amazing, that statement. Say that again.
If the White Plains Public Schools lose money that's funneled through New York State from the federal government, what is going to happen to their budget and what is going to happen to our taxes?
Education chaos in New York State, which Andrew Cuomo will be stuck with.
Right. Well,
Right.
we don't yet know what's going to happen in terms of a tax increase in the new budget that they unveiled, but we have some hints that we can expect some sort of increase when the dance is done. And we still have the issue of quality of education. We do know that they're now really going to go ahead with the bilingual education.
Right, they decided, and that has not really been publicized too much, that they're going to transform the Church Street School into a dual language kindergarten experience.
And they seem to also be paying attention to security, which has been an ongoing issue at school buildings. And so apparently they're planning to do an audit to see what really do we need to do in terms of securing our school
Right, so you have to
facilities.
watch that carefully, as everybody should. Now, this week, last weekend was another big weekend for a march. Peter, you have the story.
A huge weekend, not only for the country, but for that matter, in the world. And we're all still reverberating with the sounds of marchers totaling in the millions, calling for preservation of women's rights and protesting the behavior, policies, and attitudes of Donald Trump as president. In Washington, clearly more than double the number of people showed up on Saturday, January 21st for a protest march than showed up on January 20th for the Trump inauguration, and some of them were from Westchester. It was about 4:30 in the morning when people started arriving at the shopping center parking lot behind Lord & Taylor in Eastchester. State Senator George Latimer was serving coffee to the marchers as they checked in. Did you find anything conciliatory in his inaugural address?
It's hard to find it. I think he really doubled down on the themes of the campaign, and I would have hoped for what I've heard from other presidents in other years, but we still go forward.
Emails had gone out with tips on what to bring, what not to bring because of security, and logistics for getting into downtown Washington from the outlying parking lot where these buses and some 3,000 others would be arriving. Assemblywoman Amy Paulin played a central role in the trip.
The main goal is to communicate to our new president that we have certain goals and objectives, and we believe in certain things in this country, and we want him to protect those things: rights for women, rights for the immigrant community. We may have voted for him, we may not have voted for him, but we just want to communicate that it's time for us to all work together and to protect the rights that we all believe in. For many of the people coming today, it is their first march, and I feel proud that I was able to coordinate buses to be able to take people to share their voices, with our new president. It's about making sure that women have the right to choose, that we put people on the Supreme Court that respect that right, and I'm hoping that all of our loud voices are going to be able to communicate that.
One of those on the trip, White Plains Councilwoman Milagros Laquona.
This is the first time participating while living in this country. I moved here from Spain in 1987, so I am really very excited to do so. But it's not really my first event, because growing up in Spain with Francisco Franco, the dictator, as a student in college, I participated in many rallies against that type of regime.
There were some men, one of them Henry Clark of Bronxville.
It's important to show President Trump that his America is not an America that we want to participate in, that we represent. He lost the popular vote, and we're going to show him today what kind of support we can bring to Washington.
At about 5:30, the buses pulled out, with no one on board guessing how huge the March on Washington and others around the world would turn out to actually be. Well, Jim, you were in Washington for the inauguration, and you were out in the crowds. I think you had intended to go to an event at the News Museum.
Well, I went to the event at the News Museum. That was on Inauguration Day, and that was all day in the museum. But we were out just, I guess you'd call it sightseeing, and we were going to go to the Hirshhorn Museum, and this is Pennsylvania Avenue, and there was no. We had to go across Pennsylvania Avenue to get there.
Your wife
There was-
Robin took these pictures, right?
Yeah. And there was a trailer which you can't see, which I don't know what it was used for, but it was locked up. And there was steps going up to the door, and we got up on that platform.
Creating a security breach.
And that's
obviously.
where we talk. No, it was not anything that was a security breach.
Now, as you were looking out, I mean, could you see the end of the crowd? Because we
No,
heard,
I
heard that you really couldn't move at some points.
I was at this point for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and the people just kept streaming by, and they were coming from two ways. They were coming from the Capitol, and they were coming from the cross street that we were at, and there's people as far as you could see.
Now, from what you could see, I mean, was it as peaceful as it has been described?
Yes, it was very peaceful. On Inauguration Day, I believe the police said they arrested 270 people. In the Women's March, 0. They did not arrest anybody. And I also heard, I didn't see this firsthand, but I heard that the police were high-fiving the demonstrators, the women demonstrators.
So there was some sympathy among the Washington
And there
police
were a
for the
couple of
demonstrators.
There were a couple of entourages that had to come through cars, and the people just separated and let them go through. In one case, there was an ambulance. Obviously,
And they separated out.
no problem. But the thickness of the crowd and the amount of people, I have never been with that many people in my entire life, and it was definitely 1 million women. There's no question.
Well, you know, this all started with one woman in Hawaii posting on social media that she thought it was time for people to demonstrate opposition to what was happening politically in the U.S. Hundreds of thousands demonstrated in New York, and the same in Boston and Chicago and Los Angeles and dozens of other cities and overseas too. And there were smaller demonstrations in cities, even in Trump country. But the big event, of course, was in Washington. And you know, as we look at this, as we watch some of this footage of Washington, these things might help explain why some of the people were marching. Trump issued an executive order to start the process for building a wall along the U.S. border with Mexico, and now they're proposing that the U.S. pay for the wall through a 20% tax on Mexican imports, which would be paid by U.S. consumers. The president of Mexico canceled a meeting with Trump. The White House tried to spin it and say it was a mutual agreement to cancel, but that apparently was just White House spin. His executive order on the wall calls for building what amounts to concentration camps. It also calls for hiring 5,000 additional Border Patrol agents. He ordered state and local enforcement officials to perform the functions of immigration officers. The mayors of many cities responded, no way. Trump also ordered a green light for the Keystone XL pipeline, the crude oil pipeline. Also, he directed that they go ahead with the controversial Dakota oil pipeline. He ordered the Secretary of Commerce to streamline the permitting process to reduce regulatory burdens affecting U.S. manufacturers. He withdrew the U.S. as a signatory to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This, in effect, secedes trade in the Pacific to the Chinese. The Chinese are now the big cheese in
One
trade.
hit after another.
He ordered all government executive departments and agencies, regardless of their sources of program or operational funding, except military, to stop hiring people, a hiring freeze. At the CIA, he made a speech in front of a memorial wall dedicated to CIA personnel who were killed in the line of duty serving their country. Instead of talking about them, he talked about himself. Self-aggrandizement. He talked about the crowd size at his inauguration. He also issued a new policy, which amounts to a war crime, calling for pillaging of oil from countries like Iraq, where American troops are serving. What he said, here's the exact quote, "The old expression, to the victor belong the spoils, you remember. I always used to say, keep the oil. I wasn't a fan of Iraq. We got out wrong. And I always said, in addition to that, keep the oil. Maybe you'll have another chance to keep the oil. So said our new president.
Genghis Khan.
He ordered the start of dismantling the Affordable Care Act. Later this week, Sean Spicer, the new White House press secretary, seemed to be behaving like a normal press secretary after having a huge run-in with the media at his first briefing, in which
losing it a little.
Yeah, in which apparently Trump told him he wasn't being mean enough to the news media.
You can't be mean enough.
Yeah. Now, he has called for an investigation of the election. He claims that there were 3 to 5 million illegal votes cast. He has no proof of it. However, he has not called for an investigation of the Russian hacking, nor the plot to influence the election.
That's juicy stuff.
For the first time, the New York Times, in a headline on its front page, used the word lie to describe something that was said by a president of the United States. There is so much to report, but the most striking thing, the one thing that people will no doubt remember, is that while the president is saying we've got to do something about what he calls voter fraud and illegal voting, it has been reported that, you ready for this, folks, Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, Tiffany Trump, the president's daughter, Steve Mnuchin, his nominee to be Treasury Secretary, his aide, Steve Bannon, and his press secretary, Sean Spicer, all have been registered in 2 states to vote.
I guess they thought they don't know about absentee ballots?
Trump calls that voter fraud.
Yeah. Well, it's just absent-mindedness. Now, we lost.
Here in White Plains, there was a small vigil regarding the landmark case Roe v. Wade, which assured women's rights to abortion.
In downtown White Plains by Renaissance Fountain Wednesday night, a group from the women's organization NOW gathered for a vigil. The local chairwoman, Elizabeth Zimmerman, talked about the reasons NOW will be fighting any efforts by political conservatives to restrict women's reproductive rights.
Thanks to the court's decision in Roe v. Wade, American women regained control over their bodies and their futures. Tonight, let us commemorate and celebrate it. Let us reaffirm that the government should not intrude into our most private and personal business. And may we all rededicate ourselves to ensuring that it remains the law of this land, that we will not go back, that Roe v. Wade is the law and will remain the law.
John Bailey, Peter Katz, Jim Benerofe, good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.